Hello there, I'm Randy Skretvet, the author of Laurel and Hardy, The Magic Behind the Movies, and we are watching Two Tars, a great Laurel and Hardy short filmed from June 22nd through July 3rd of 1928, and copyrighted and released on November 3rd. The working title of this film appears to have been Two Tough Tars, and there is a review under that name, Two Tough Tars. Some people think this was a three-reeler. It was never really a three-reeler. It is a slightly longer than usual two-reeler at 21 minutes and 25 seconds. And originally, this had an interesting opening scene in the script, which was not used, where Laurel and Hardy on their shore leave are fishing. And Ollie keeps catching fish, much to Stan's consternation. You can read that whole scene in my book, The Laurel and Hardy Movie Scripts, Volume 2. Now, before long, I think we have stock footage here. I don't think the Hal Roach photographers went out and shot this footage. I think this is just stock footage that they bought. You're going to hear a reference here, or see a reference, to the battleship Oregon. Well, that would have been obsolete in 1928, because that saw action in the Spanish-American War and was in commission from 1896 to 1919. And now we are driving down Main Street in Culver City until we hit a corner right there. That's the back lot. Where they are about to encounter Sam Lufkin in the first of his two roles. You'll see him much more prominently later on. Laurel and Hardy, by the way, are in a 1919 Ford Model T convertible. And there's a wonderful website, which is the Internet Movie Car Database, imcdb.org, and you can find out all sorts of information about cars used in many, many different films, including lots of Laurel and Hardy movies. There you see Stan with his uncontrollable obsession for playing with the car's throttle lever, which controls the engine speed. He does that in movie after movie when they're in their Model T. Now, you're going to see a title here about there's the first rule of the road, and what's rule number 2. This is similar to a gag that they did in Should Married Men Go Home, where there's a right way and a wrong way. And then after a mishap, Stan says, wrong way. Now, we are also about to see a couple of girls in this film. Ruby Blaine, who is a tall and imposing blonde. She was born in Hutchinson, Kansas on August 27th, 1903. She grew up in Canton, Missouri as the second of 9 children. She finished the second year of high school and then went to Hollywood, where in 1925 she appeared in her first film, The Midnight Girl, a dramatic feature starring Lila Lee and Bela Lugosi. There they are, Thelma and Ruby. Ruby's 14 known films include occasional high-profile features, such as Bluebeard's 7 Wives with Ben Lyon, but more often she was in low-budget westerns with Tom Tyler, Bob Custer, and Kermit Maynard, with whom she made 3 features in 1927 as his leading lady. Now, Ruby was not in movies in 1928, not too many in 1928, except for this one, and Thomas Benton Roberts recalled that she appeared as a professional wrestler in Pasadena. Now, certainly her work in westerns and her manhandling of Charlie Hall in Two Tars shows that she was not afraid of a little roughhousing. Now, this scene intercuts scenes shot on the back lot. Thelma and Ruby are on the back lot at the Roach Studio, and the shots of Stan and Ollie are on Culver City's Main Street. And there we get to see C.C. Robinson Plumbing, which at that point was 7033 Main Street. Now that building is 3808 Main Street. And as I speak this, it is now a hair salon called Dry Bar. Now, the other lady is little Thelma Hill, who was Thelma Floy Hillerman. She was born in Emporia, Kansas on December 12th of 1902. Her widowed mother, Gussie, ran a boarding house in Emporia, but by the mid-teens they had moved to Los Angeles, and Thelma often visited the nearby Mack Sennett studios and was noticed by F. Richard Jones, who was the supervising director. So, doing bit parts whenever her school schedule permitted, she began working for Mack Sennett around 1919. One of her best remembered roles is as Ben Turpin's sweetheart in A Prodigal Bridegroom, made in 1926, where she obscured her lovely face with big horn-rimmed glasses, and she frolicked with Ben Turpin in a bucolic setting. And you're going to see a joke here about Secretary Wilbur. Secretary Wilbur was Curtis Dwight Wilbur, who was the 43rd United States Secretary of the Navy from March 19, 1924 until March 9, 1929. And in 1905, he had written a popular children's book called The Bear Family at Home. Now, Thelma made about 100 films, most of them for Mack Sennett, and she also did a series of a dozen films as Toots to Bud Duncan's Casper in a series based on the comic strip Toots and Casper. She had also worked with Stan Laurel before in a 1925 Joe Rock comedy called Pie-Eyed. Now, there's kind of a jarring jump cut there. You see the lighting changed and the boys' uniforms changed, and Ollie's hair changed. He doesn't have the little tuft of hair under his cap anymore. And why this happened and why it wasn't bridged with an insert shot of anything, a close-up of Ollie or even the gumball machine, that's really a puzzler. It's a very jarring jump cut. Doodad busted, yes indeed. Well, before long we're going to see more of Main Street. There's Rules Ice Cream, R-U-H-L, Rules Ice Cream, which at that point was located at 7005 and a half on Main Street, and that building is now 3844 Main Street. Now, Thelma, unfortunately, well, she was married to a man named John Sinclair, who was W.C. Field's stunt double and drinking buddy. And unfortunately, Thelma joined her husband and Mr. Fields in too many libations, and by 1932 she was diagnosed with chronic alcoholism, and unfortunately she died from a cerebral hemorrhage on May 11th, 1938, only 36 years old. Very sad. Now here we have Charlie Hall, and he was born August 19th, 1899 in Birmingham, England. He worked as a carpenter for the Metropolitan Railway Carriage and Wagon Company Limited in Birmingham, but then sailed for New York in January of 1920 and worked in a canning factory before coming to Hollywood. And while he was building sets at the Hal Roach lot in late 1922, he began working as an actor, ultimately appearing in 300 films through 1956, making 171 of those films for Hal Roach. And he appeared in 57 Laurel and Hardy films, more than any other actor. Two Tars is his 11th film with Laurel and Hardy. He would continue to work as a carpenter, and I think also as a dialogue coach at the Hal Roach studio, even while appearing in films during the 1920s and 30s. Now, his most memorable performances with Laurel and Hardy, I think, are the ones in Them Thar Hills and its follow-up, Tit for Tat. His last appearance with the boys was in Saps at Sea in 1940. He was a frequent foil for Charlie Chase, Thelma Todd, and Leon Errol. He also worked with Wheeler and Woolsey and Abbott and Costello. And his feature films included College with Buster Keaton, The Gay Divorcee with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1939. He appeared twice as a contestant on TV's You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx, sporting an outrageous Cockney accent and giving no hint of his prior film work. And he worked as a prop maker at Warner Brothers in later years. He died only age 60 on December 7th, 1959 in North Hollywood. Now, Stan was slipping and sliding on those gumballs on hard pavement, and that's some pretty physical comedy, some pretty potentially injurious physical comedy. Now, here we have an example of Ruby Blaine not being afraid to engage in some roughhousing, and the boys admiring the girl's moxie. And we are about to go on location now. Now, the 1928 Hal Roach Studios date book, which made mention of whatever location shooting any company was doing, says Centinela Boulevard. Now, that's also what Thomas Benton Roberts, who was a prop man on this film, also said, Centinela Boulevard. But it's really Centinela Avenue, and it's about 5.3 miles west of the Hal Roach studio. And the road now borders the Santa Monica Municipal Airport. Now, we're going to see a second line forming, thinking that Laurel and Hardy have found a way around this traffic jam. One guy is out of gas. You'd think somebody would give him some from a spare can. And, of course, also the road is under construction, as just about every freeway in Southern California always seems to be. The boys look pretty good in the girls' cloche hats. I first saw this movie when I was 5 years old, and it took me a while to realize that they were wearing the girls' hats and that the girls were wearing the sailor hats. Well, anyway, this was shot on Centinela Avenue. There seems to be a little bit of controversy about that. Some other people think that this was shot on 23rd Street near Marine Avenue. But since Thomas Benton Roberts said Centinela, and since the date book said Centinela, I'm going with Centinela. Now, little Thelma here is the instigator of all this mayhem, with her comment about that bozo. So, you know, this little meek, mild young lady is actually the person who starts all of this road rage. Now, there's Grace Woods and Edgar Kennedy in the car behind. And Grace was a freelance actress in films for about 25 years. She is best remembered as the lady in the Laurel and Hardy talkie Perfect Day who keeps saying, "Goodbye, goodbye." with Harry Bernard. And in the 1930s, she worked as a seamstress in studios. She also worked as a stand-in. There's some damage to Edgar's radiator. Edgar's car is a 1922 Buick. And again, for information about many of the cars used in this and other Laurel and Hardy movies, you can go online to imcdb.org, the Internet Movie Cars database. Now, behind there is Sam Lufkin again. Now he has a mustache and a derby. He looks very different from the pedestrian that he played earlier in the film, and he is in a 1920 Studebaker Special 6EH. I don't know what EH stands for. And now remember that Laurel and Hardy's car is a rental, and so they would especially not want this to be damaged. You will note that headlights, doors, fenders, and wheels all come off very easily on these cars, and windshields are also smashed very easily. Edgar Livingston Kennedy there, he's the director of From Soup to Nuts and Your Darn Tootin', and appeared with Laurel and Hardy in 11 films. 4 of those appearances are in this collection, along with A Pair of Tights, in which he co-stars with Anita Garvin, Marion Byron, and Stu Irwin. And now Mr. Lufkin's windshield has been damaged or destroyed, really. And now he's going to figure out what kind of retaliation he can do. Well, he bursts the girl's balloon, which is more insult than injury, but Ruby seems to be really distraught over it. Oh, my goodness gracious. And so, what is Stan about to do? Well, I think he's about to reward Sam Lufkin with a cement shampoo. There we go. Now, this is a longer reciprocal destruction fight than in the previous films. And just as Laurel and Hardy had already presented a slower form of film comedy, they now slowed down their own invention. So, in the Battle of the Century and Your Darn Tootin', events come very quickly to a boil, but in two tars they simmer. Now we have an inner tube here, and Richard Currier, who was the film editor on this, he remembered in 1980 that this gag ran into trouble with some regional censors because it showed young people how to puncture tires. Now, in 1928, any movie was subject to the approval of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, state censor boards, and regional censor boards. And now at this point, Laurel and Hardy have had large-scale skirmishes involving hats, pies, traffic, rocks, more pies, trousers, and mud. And perhaps, maybe since the traffic jam and Leave 'em Laughing wasn't all that destructive, maybe the gagmen decided to return to cars for a more definitive automotive tit-for-tat battle. Now, Jack O'Brien is the guy right there whose entire belongings are rolled up on the top of his car and repeatedly dismantled. He is in a 1925 Studebaker Special 6 duplex Phaeton. He seems to be sort of a forerunner of the people migrating from Oklahoma and Arkansas to California, as you see in newsreels of the middle 1930s and in the 1940 film The Grapes of Wrath. John Michael O'Brien, born in 1895 in Sydney, Australia, came to the United States in 1920 and mostly worked as a stuntman at the Hal Roach studio. Now here we have Stan under the car. Now this is unseen, but it's sort of like the Yakima Canutt famous stunt of going under the team of running horses. You never see Stan under the car because there's a well-placed cut, but he had to have been on the ground at some point under the two cars as they separated. Now, Mr. Kennedy's car immediately loses its radiator and its driver's side door, and pretty soon it's going to lose its top and its running board. And then the boys' car will lose a fender. They will have to explain that to the rental company. Now, these breakaway cars, many of them were put together by a man named Thomas Benton Roberts, born in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And you will see him in just a moment. You'll also see truck driver Harry Bernard in his first of 102 films for the Hal Roach Studios, 25 of them with Laurel and Hardy. And there goes the running board. And you will see Harry's truck there's Thomas Benton Roberts. And coming up, there's Harry Bernard. He's in a truck which is an Indiana 2.5 ton made by the Indiana Truck Corporation of Marion, Indiana. Now, there we go. There's Thomas Benton Roberts with the tomato. And he's going to say the shot where the tomato hit Stan in the neck, a prop man named Harry Black did that. He had great aim, never missed on things like that. For my scene with Stan, they cut a tomato open and put catsup in it so it would photograph better. When he rubbed it all over my face, boy, I could taste catsup for a week after that. They didn't do any damage to my car. They pulled the spare tire off, that's all. Stan asked me how much the car was worth, and I had just paid $1,500 for it a couple of weeks earlier. It wasn't a new one, it was a 1923 Cadillac. I'd worn my own clothes in the picture. I got paid $35 for a new suit, $15 for a new hat, $15 for the use of the car, and $15 for myself. I just took the clothes to the cleaners and had the tomato juice cleaned out and kept the money. Now, Thomas Benton Roberts later began a business supplying boats to studios, and by his own count, in a 33-year movie career, he aided in the production of 2,228 films, among them Captains Courageous, Mrs. Miniver, and Saps at Sea. And he and his wife Lois were honored guests at many Sons of the Desert functions in the 1980s, and he died in 1987 at the age of 85. There's Jack Hill as the Peacemaker, and he just tipped over a 1920 Studebaker Big 6 EG. And Thomas Benton Roberts said, Jack Hill would kill himself for a Stan and Babe picture. When he fell against the car, he could have broken his back, but he kept going. He was a good stuntman and stunt driver. He'd do anything to get a day's work. Now, there you see Stan's double, Ham Kinsey, peeking over the top of the car at the left there. And once again, Harry Bernard was born in Kensington, England on January 13th, 1878. His real name was Frederick Owen Salmon. He was later in vaudeville in San Francisco. Here, Grace Woods gets a faceful of what was supposed to be dirty motor oil, but Thomas Benton Roberts told me that this was in fact chocolate syrup. There's Charlie Rogers accidentally hitting Ollie in the face, and he became a key writer and director with Laurel and Hardy. This is his second of 23 films as an actor at the Roach Studio. We will see him again in Habeas Corpus. He's in a 1919 Ford Model T coupe, which was called the Tall T or the Phone Booth Ford because of its tall, narrow top. Now we have a car getting hit from two cars at once. The car on the left is a 1923 Chevrolet Superior. The car at the right is a 1918 Cadillac Type 57, and the car in the middle is squished. There's Jack O'Brien again at his 1925 Studebaker Duplex Phaeton with all the stuff rolled up again and falling down again. Now there's really going to be road rage, and it looks like Jack O'Brien's entire household supplies are going to be thrown to the wind here. We are soon going to see Edgar Deering. Edgar is riding a 1921 Harley-Davidson Model J. He was born in Ceres, Central California on May 4th, 1893. His early career as a stage actor was interrupted by service in the World War, where he became a motorcycle courier at General Pershing's headquarters. He was later a cement worker. He did some barnstorming with an air circus. He was reportedly a deputy on the federal narcotics squad at the Mexican border. And then, according to a couple of sources, he joined the police motorcycle squad, the LAPD. His first film as a motorcycle cop is Harold Lloyd's Hot Water in 1924, and it appears that he had become a full-time movie actor by 1927. He appeared in about 350 movies, at least 40 of them as a motorcycle policeman, including The Awful Truth and Sullivan's Travels. He was still policing the highways when he encountered Stan and Ollie for the last time in The Big Noise in 1944. He laid down his bike in the late 40s and concentrated on westerns and dramatic TV shows for the last 15 years or so of his career. Retiring in 1964, he died at the Motion Picture Country House in Woodland Hills, California on August 17, 1974 at age 81. Now, before long, everybody's going to come to their senses here. And they're going to start clearing out on the other side of the road, and makes you wonder why they didn't do that earlier. The chauffeur walking along, by the way, was a 1922 Marmon Model 34. And pretty soon we're going to see, there's Charlie Rogers' car again, and pretty soon we're going to see another car with no shock absorbers because everybody's heads are going to come through the canvas top. Also, you will soon see a truck running over Edgar Deering's motorcycle. Now, Thomas Benton Roberts said, one of our prop men, Don Sandstrom, took the motorcycle down to a guy with a steamroller. He told him he wanted to have it smashed for a picture. The guy said, lay it down there. And when he drove over the bike, it darn near upset the big steamroller. So we ended up using the motorcycle where the cop drove in, two motorcycles that we combined and crushed, and the one that he picked up and looked at was still another one. We used 4 motorcycles for one gag. And there is the fourth one. Happily, that's not the real one. Evidently, Edgar Deering supplied his own motorcycle and uniform, which is one reason why he was cast as a motorcycle cop in so many movies. Now, before long, you're going to see that somehow, there, he's putting it all back. You got to see there, Jack O'Brien was putting stuff back into his rolling it up in the top of his car again. Up, and, there, my goodness gracious, there's the end, definitively, of Edgar Kennedy's car. And now that he's got it all rolled up back again, somehow having retrieved it all, there it goes again. Poor old Jack O'Brien, my goodness me. Now, Edgar is about to accost a couple of college boys before long. Oh, there we go. He does that, a cop does that at the end of a pair of tights. You'll see that gag again in a pair of tights. And now everybody's finally somehow has gotten themselves out of the traffic jam. We have a couple of college boys, and you'll see that the driver's side door comes off even without Laurel and Hardy doing anything about it. And unfortunately, the motor has blown. Now, the final scenes here are in a tunnel that was beneath Colorado Avenue, which formerly served trolley and rail lines that ran north along the Pacific coast. And Thomas Benton Roberts said, the mechanics in the studio garage narrowed the chassis, but I did the bodywork and built the hood. That's on the Laurel and Hardy car that you'll see. He said, I had to reseat the radiator because it was on an angle. Then we just towed it out of the tunnel with an airplane cable attached to a truck. The radiator's steaming on the car. That was easy. We just used a smoke pot. And as we see Laurel and Hardy in the car that was Thomas Benton Roberts' handiwork, we fade out and we bid a fond farewell to two tars. I'm Randy Skretvet, and I thank you very, very much for listening.